Go ahead and take your Bibles and turn with me to Exodus chapter 19. The Ten Commandments are words of grace from a benevolent God to his covenant people. And they are not to be ignored today any more than they should have been ignored 3,500 years ago when he initially gave them to his covenant people then. Over the next 11 weeks, we are going to be studying these Ten Commandments, one obviously every week, and we are going to be taking a look at how it is that God displays his grace to us through these Ten Commandments, and how they are so desperately needed in the 21st century. So in other words, I've said many times over the last few weeks, we cannot unhitch ourselves from the law. They are desperately needed. And while the Ten Commandments was made for the covenant people of God 3,500 years ago, it is still made for the covenant people of God today. We are his covenant people, we who believe in Christ. And so while some seek to throw it off, we need to make sure that we are firmly holding on to it. They are words of grace from a benevolent God to his covenant people. We need to understand them. Because too often, believers today do not see them as grace-filled words. They see them actually the opposite of grace-filled words. They see them as binding and unloving and harsh. They are not. They are words of grace from the benevolent God to his covenant people, and thus we are expected to live accordingly. So the next 11 weeks, as I said, we're going to be going over them. And the 11 weeks is because today we're not actually going over any of the Ten Commandments. We are simply introducing the Ten Commandments by reading through and understanding, trying to come to a better understanding of Exodus chapter 19, which is introducing those Ten Commandments. Because I think that so often the reason that we misunderstand the Ten Commandments is because we are misunderstanding the context of what the Ten Commandments are and where they came from and why they came in the first place. And so we need to understand maybe a little bit better about where they came from and why they came to us. Maybe, just maybe, we will see them as those words of grace rather than those binding, unloving words. So, this morning as we go through, we're going to go through all 25 verses. I'm not going to be able to read, usually I will read a passage and then I will go through every verse as we go through. I'm not going to be able to do that because there are 25 verses, I'm not going to be able to do that. But we're going to read through the 25 verses so that we can at least get the context of what's all going on. And then, as we go back and we study them, I'm going to give you, I'm being a very, very bad Baptist this morning. We are not doing 3 points. We're doing 5. I'm sorry. But I try to redeem myself in that they are still alliterated. Alright? So let me go ahead and give you those 5 points that we're going to be going through. First off, there is a completed promise. Secondly, there is a covenant promise. Third, there is a consecrated people. Fourth, there is a cowering people. And then fifth, I couldn't exactly figure out how I was going to put this, but I finally said there is a communicating presence. We could say that there is a communicating power. We could say that there is a communicating person. There is a communicating presence there. Okay? So let's go ahead, if you will, please honor the Word of God by standing as we read through it. We're going to go from 1 all the way to the end of the chapter, verse 25. On the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day when they came into the wilderness of Sinai, they set out from Rephidim and came into the wilderness of Sinai. And they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain while Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the people of Israel, You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and set before them all these words that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered together and said, All that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses reported the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. When Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, and you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, Take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot. Whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up to the mountain. So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, Be ready for the third day. Do not go near a woman. On the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain, and every loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God. And they took their stand at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. The Lord said to Moses, Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish. Also let the priests who come near to the Lord consecrate themselves, lest the Lord break out against them. And Moses said to the people, said to the Lord, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, Set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, Go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. Be seated. God is a faithful God, and what He has promised, He is going to do. We are rarely ever given a timeline, though, of what God is going to do. We may be told what He will do, but we never are told when exactly He is going to do what He has promised that He will do. And so often what we do is people speculate about how it is that God's going to do it, and when it is that God is going to do it, whatever He has promised. And so we have these speculations, and we are expecting them, and so we try to figure out exactly what the timetable is. We try to figure out exactly what's going on in our lives, what's going on in the world, and so forth and so on, and so that we can figure out exactly when God is going to do it. The easiest thing to go to that we tend to do, that a lot, not we, but a lot of people tend to do, is trying to figure out when Jesus is going to return. How often do we hear, well, we are in the end times, and it's just a matter of time because, Israel is, Jews are in Israel, and there's a state again, and so forth, and so it's just a matter of time, and so forth. And we should always be expecting Jesus to return. But we need to be very careful about speculating on anything that God is going to be doing. We know what He will do, we just simply don't know when He will do it. Abraham was this way. We're all this way. We do it with something in our lives all the time. Abraham did this with God's promise of a son. Right? God had promised him that He would give him a son. And Abraham believed the promise. He left his home. He went out to go wherever God was leading him. And he believed that God would ultimately give him a son. But then we see that there are times where Abraham was trying to basically speculate. And so ultimately, God comes down to him, and Abraham says to God, well, I know that I'm going to have an heir, but it's going to be my chief servant here. And so I'm going to give everything to him, and he is going to carry on my name. God says, he's not going to be your son. He's not going to be the one that I have chosen for you. I am giving you a son. And then just a little bit later, right, then we have Hagar entering into the picture. And Sarai saying, hey, you can't have a child by me, so why don't you go on to my servant Hagar, and she can bear you a son. And he does that. Except Ishmael wasn't the promised son either. And so whenever we try to speculate, whenever we try to take things into our own hands, things go awry. There's, of course, been fighting ever since Ishmael and Isaac have been born. We try to figure it out, we try to speculate, and then all of a sudden, when things don't work out the way that we are expecting them to work out, we are disappointed. And we think that we're disappointed in God. But in reality, what we are disappointed in is ourselves and our own futile speculations. God is promised, and God is faithful to his promise. In the first two verses here of Exodus 19, we see a promise being completed. And it probably, pretty much definitely, did not happen exactly as Moses was expecting. God had called on Moses to go to Egypt to deliver his people, and that was done, what we see at Mount Horeb. If you go to Exodus chapter 3, which we're going to go to in just a second, so if you want to go ahead and flip over, you can. Mount Horeb, also known as Mount Sinai. And God revealed himself to Moses in that burning bush that Debbie read to us earlier, reading the Acts account of what happened in Exodus chapter 3. And God called Moses to deliver his people, to go to Egypt, deliver his people. And there, God even gave Moses his actual name, that he is Yahweh, that he is I am. And there God made a promise. Look at Exodus chapter 3, verse 12. God speaking, or God saying this. He said, "But I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." And things didn't go, like I said, as Moses probably had thought that they were. He had some doubts. He had some questions about how God was going to do it. And would the people actually listen to him? And that's why God gives him his name. Who shall I say? Send me. And then what's his name? They need to know his name. So God gives him his name. And God gives him all these special abilities. The power of God working through Moses and such. And so he probably wasn't expecting to have to face all of Pharaoh's magicians and then have Pharaoh's magicians do some of those same miracles themselves by Satan's power, right? He probably wasn't expecting that. He probably wasn't really expecting the 10 plagues to have to happen. He probably wasn't expecting that the firstborn of every Egyptian was going to die. He probably wasn't expecting that. He wasn't expecting to have to lead the people out of Egypt and wander in the wilderness and go one direction, and then all of a sudden be told by God that he actually needs to go backwards, back toward Egypt for just a little bit, in order for them to cross the Red Sea, where they are then in between a rock and a hard place, because right over here, this is Pharaoh's army, and right over here, this is the Red Sea, and they have nowhere to go. Probably wasn't expecting to be able to see the Red Sea part and be able to walk through on dry ground. It was nothing like he was expecting, but exactly according to God's plan. And God was faithful to his promise, even though it wasn't what he was looking for. Look with me, verses 1 and 2. On the third new moon, so this is 2.5 months after they left Egypt. On the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day, they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from Rephidim and came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they encamped in the wilderness. There Israel encamped before the mountain, Mount Sinai, right? Well, Moses went up to God. Beloved, God is a God who keeps every promise he has made. And these are not, as Mary Poppins would say, pie crust promises, easily made, easily broken. These promises are from the Almighty God, and if he promises it, he is faithful to do it, and he has the power to do it. But he does it in his time. He is a faithful God, and so therefore, be patient with God. He's a promising God. He is a faithful God. But he is also a methodical God. He has a method of doing things. He has it planned out exactly how he wants it to happen. A few weeks ago, raise your hand if you've seen Endgame. Anybody seen Endgame? The rest of you need to make a confession. A few weeks ago, before Endgame came out, there was a meme with Benedict Cumberbatch on it. And it said something to the effect of, if I remember correctly, Doctor Strange saw Endgame, what is it? 14,605 times. That's what it was, yeah. 14,605 times, right? And he didn't spoil any of it. Right? So, technically, though, Doctor Strange watched 14,604 times of how Endgame would not happen, and one time of how it actually would happen if they were going to win. The others, they lost. There was only one way to win the Endgame. And God doesn't need to watch 14,605 times the way that how to keep the world in order. He knows exactly from the very beginning, from eternity past, the exact way this world will work. And he is working it through even as we speak. Understand that these people at Mount Sinai were already, though, in this covenant. And he is bringing them through to his plan. He isn't taking them any other way than the way that is necessary to be his people and to be a people for the nations. Incidentally, just throwing this in there, I never heard anybody one time say, after reading that meme or whatever, or knowing that there's only one way for Endgame to work, I never heard anybody at one time, not even one time, ever say, well, they were all robots. Right? Just because there is a plan, just because there may be one way, does not mean that we are robots. Right? So anyway, just say, let's just throw that out there. Okay. God is sovereign, and his plan is working, and his promise is coming through. And it is for a covenant people. It is going to be good for the covenant people. So understand, Israel is a covenant people already. Going into the Mosaic covenant does not make them a covenant people. I think we miss that sometimes. I think we all almost think of Israel as really almost starting at the Mosaic covenant, rather than remembering that the Mosaic covenant happened to Israel because of the covenant with Abraham. They were already in a covenant with God. The reason that they were actually even delivered out of Egypt is because they were a covenant people of God based on the promise that was given to Abraham. So there's not just one promise here, but there are two promises that are actually being brought about in this meeting with God on Mount Sinai. A covenant people is all of a sudden realizing who it is that their God is, what it is that he has done for them, and that he has called them, and that he has chosen them, and that he has done what is necessary in order to bring them about to this place in order to show them how they are to be a covenant people for him. And so there's not just one promise that Moses and the people are going to worship God on that mountain and serve God on that mountain, but there are two promises that are being completed. There's not just one covenant that is being made, but there is a second covenant that is being brought through. So we see the completed promise, but we also see the covenant promise. Look at me, verses 3 through 6. The Lord called to him out of the mountain. So Moses has gone up to God, right? And therefore he sees that God called to him out of the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob and tell the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." That's all part of that Abrahamic covenant, bringing them out of Egypt. "Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel." So we have that first covenant with Abraham, the house of Jacob, the people of Israel. Those are two ways to remind the people of that same truth, that God had already made that covenant with Abraham. And part of this covenant was God informing Abraham long before that his descendants would ultimately go into a place, and they would be in that place for about 400 or so years. And they would serve in that place, and ultimately they would be delivered, they would be brought out. It was about 430 years as it came about. But we see that once again a faithful God is living up to his promises. But we see this new covenant coming about. This covenant, it didn't replace the Abrahamic covenant, the covenant with Abraham, but it was built upon it. And it wasn't just with one man, like the one with Abraham. It was made with Abraham, and then it was restated to Isaac, and then it was restated to Jacob. And then got his name changed to Israel. It wasn't just to one man, but it was to all of Israel. There's no addition, there's no multiplication in the first covenant, but here all of a sudden it is a plethora of people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are actually receiving this covenant. This Mosaic or the Sinaitic covenant of God. And what this covenant did not do is make them a covenant people of God. What this covenant did do is make them an effective covenant people of God. That's why they are good at it. Go back, verses 5 and 6 here. Read with me one more time. "Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant," he doesn't say that you will be my covenant people, right? He doesn't say that. Because they already are his covenant people. "Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the people of Israel." God was using Israel. They were his treasured possession. Right? They were supposed to be different than the rest of the world. Everybody should have seen that. Everybody should have known that this people, there was something special about them. God looked after them differently than he looked after all the other people, right? There's that general grace out there that everybody receives, right? It rains on the just and the unjust. There's just all this generous grace of God, the generic grace of God that goes out to everybody. But there is a special grace of God upon this people known as Israel. What's going on with them? You will be my treasured possession if you will keep my covenant, if you will obey my commands. You will be a people that are a priest, right? Now think real quick. Think for a moment about having a nice, soft Egyptian cotton robe, right? It's monogrammed with your initials. That's your robe. You're not going to take that robe, or you're not going to take any other robe when you have that robe as your own. It's yours. You like it. You treasure it. You keep it. And you show it off. Right? This is your robe. This is what it means when we talk about a treasured possession. The King James Version will actually use the word peculiar, right? And so we think of peculiar as strange, but that's not what it meant back in King James days, right? Peculiar meant that it was owned by, it was treasured by, it was something that was distinct and different than everybody else's. We think of it as weird. But back then it was like, this is my treasure, this is mine, this is my wallet, I know that's my wallet, it's got my ID in it, it's got my credit cards in it, it's got my cash in it. Speaking of cash, I owe you $10, don't leave today. Sorry, that was just thrown out there, I apologize. Okay, so that's what treasured possession means. He loves it, he owns it, he has it, he shows it off, he displays it, he is not going to take anybody out other than his people here that are Israel. It says these are his covenant people. And he wants to display them and show them off. They were supposed to be a kingdom of priests. They were supposed to be a holy nation. In other words, they were supposed to be the ones that were the go-betweens between all the other nations and God. They were centered in the middle of basically the entire world, known world at the time. Nations would have to go through them. They would have to stop there. They would have to trade with them. They would have to start up, their journey again and so forth. They had to be there. They were supposed to see what Israel was really like and then understand who this God of Israel really was, because these people were the go-betweens. They were an entire nation supposed to be a priest. The go-between between all other nations and God. A nation of priests. A holy nation for all the world to see. But how in the world can they be the go-between? How can they be the mediator between the world and God if they are living outside of God's will? How can they be considered a holy nation? A nation that is set apart, a nation that is pure, if they are living outside the will of God? Priests didn't just simply state facts. They lived well. They lived according to those facts. They would not just simply be a nation with right orthodoxy. They would be a nation with right orthopraxy. Not just the right doctrines, the right practices as well. The right living. Living by the commandments would gain them absolutely no favor with God. It's not like God would be like, man, if you just keep doing this, I love you more. The fact that he had even given them the Ten Commandments already showed that he favored them. God displayed his favor to the people by giving his commands. But the people displayed their favor for God by living by those commands. So the same can be said about us. With me real quick to John chapter 15. Let's go to John chapter 14, then we'll go to 15. Okay. Chapter 14, verse 15. Here Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. You display your love, you display your favor by keeping the commandments. Now let's go to 15. Look at verses 16 and 17. Same discourse, same time frame, just kind of talking as they're walking. He says, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, you may get it. He may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. I command you to obey. I command you to bear fruit, so that you can show and display and love one another. To live by God's commands is to show one's love and favor for God and for His people. It's not to gain favor from God. The fact that God has already chosen his covenant people is proof enough of his love and his favor. Our love is shown by obedience to him. So there's a completed promise. There's a covenant promise. Now there's also a consecrated people, because Israel has already been a people of covenant. God has called them then to consecrate themselves. In other words, they are to bring about and do what is outwardly necessary in order to wash themselves clean. They can't wash themselves clean inwardly. Only God can do that. Only God can change the heart. Only God can do what is necessary on the inside with the soul, with the spirit, in order to bring about a cleansing from the inside. But they are to then do whatever is necessary on the outside in order to get themselves ready for God to come and to visit with them. They are to make themselves pure and holy as far as what they can do physically. This is very much like what Paul says in Philippians. If you want to go there, you can. But Philippians chapter 2, he says, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, inside of you. He works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure." So you work it out, he works it in. You consecrate the outside, God consecrates the inside. God does the inner work, we do the outer display of what God is doing already. And this is what God has called Israel to do. He's called them to consecrate themselves, set themselves apart. Whatever they do outwardly needs to be done, right? Whatever it is that He is calling them to do. And like I said, we won't be able to read every verse in here, but we notice that there are things that they are supposed to do that God has called them to do. And even Moses may have either made sure that they were still making their concentration fully on God, or that this was just something that Moses said that we just didn't record previously, but it was something that God said through Moses, and Moses just went ahead and repeated it rather than saying everything at one time. But he says that they are supposed to go back, and you will see that they are supposed to consecrate themselves. They're supposed to wash their garments. They're supposed to set up a barrier between themselves and the mountain where God was going to descend. So they are not supposed to touch it. They are not supposed to go up on it. They're not supposed to do anything with the mountain. They're supposed to stay completely away from it. And there's this one really interesting part that Moses brings up. He says, stay away from women. Right? And it's not that women were bad. It's not that women were evil. Right? It wasn't that even sexual intercourse was bad or evil or anything like that. Right? It was like your entire concentration needs to be upon God at this moment. Everything, every fiber of your being needs to be looking for the coming of the Lord. This is very much what like Paul was saying in 1 Corinthians, when we were in 1 Corinthians, right? And he says that hey, you don't use women and you need to be married and such, but if you guys agree for a time to abstain from sexual relations and you just simply want to pray during that time, then do that. That's good. You should focus all of your concentration upon God at that time. But then don't forget to come back, right? So this is the same kind of concept that Moses is using. Abstain for now, because your concentration is going to be on God, and it always should be upon God. They were preparing to meet this God that has called them out of Egypt, that has already delivered them out of Egypt because they are a covenant people. And they are going to meet him on that very mountain. It's not to be taken lightly. God is a holy God. And he is not to be approached flippantly. We see glimpses of this in the Bible. We see one with, soon after this actually took place, not too long after, Nadab and Abihu, priests before the Lord. They were just given the law, exactly how the ingredients of incense is supposed to be. They decide to ignore it. We can approach God any way that we want. Meet their own incense. Burn that before the Lord. And they have deadly consequences. They pay for it with their lives. God is a holy God. You don't do that. You don't just go to him any flippant way that you want to. You go to him as he has called us to go to him. We see with the people at Beth Shemesh. The people of Israel had lost the ark. to the Philistines, and ultimately they finally get it back, and the people of Bethshemesh, so happy that they got it back, decided they're going to display the Ark of the Covenant for everybody to see up on top of this big hill so that everybody could come and see it. And then all these men started looking inside the Ark. They weren't even supposed to touch it. They weren't supposed to display it. They weren't supposed to do anything like that. They just decided they were going to do it. Even though God had said not to, they were just going to do it because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And so they approached it in an unholy way, and they looked inside the Ark. And thousands and thousands died. Of course, we're familiar probably with the story of Uzzah, as they were bringing the Ark back into Jerusalem, or into Jerusalem. David had commissioned that it be brought back in. They brought it on a cart. They weren't supposed to bring it on a cart. There were holes for holes to go through, and they were supposed to bring it upon their shoulders. They brought it on a cart. And when the oxen stumbled, the ark is about to fall off. And Uzzah steadies the ark so it doesn't fall. God had already commanded, do not touch the ark. And once again, going and doing what we want and flippantly going and before God any way that we just simply think we can or we want to, this holy God. Uzzah died on the spot. He's a holy God. And so when he actually does come down, when he displays himself before the people, when he descends, they understand. Because they're no longer just consecrating themselves, they're no longer just a consecrated people, they are now a cowering people. Look at verse 16 real quick. On the morning of the third day, so this is the third day of the third month, right? There's this idea of three, God's displaying of himself there, right? So on the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and very loud trumpet blasts, so that all the people in the camp trembled. The consecrated people became a cowering people. It's a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living God, isn't it? To be that near to God's holy, manifested presence is terrifying. And they couldn't even bear. If you go back, go into chapter 20, you will see they can't even bear to hear God's voice. They asked Moses just to go and speak with him on his own. But imagine hearing the trumpet blast, right? Imagine, your day is going as normal. And you wake up and you're maybe a little excited because God is coming today. And all of a sudden you hear these trumpet blasts. And trumpet blasts back then, they could mean one of three things. One is that there was a celebration going on. And this probably wasn't exactly the celebration that they were thinking maybe that it would be. I don't know. But it was either for celebration or that there was war. And so it was telling all the men to gear up and be ready for battle. Or there was royalty. King was coming. He was descending upon that mountain. Thunder and lightning crashed all around me. Think about it. You hear the blast. All of a sudden, the sky turns dark with the smoke of God's presence. Thunder is sounding, lightning everywhere. The mountain looks like it's on fire. That is not a sight or a sound for you just to go, oh, that's cool. The earth is trembling underneath of you. This is a terrifying event. God is holy, and God is coming, and his presence is there. This God that was coming down was certainly not the old man upstairs. Like the description of Aslan, when Susan asked if he was quite safe, Mr. Beaver responded, "Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you." Israel finally realized that their gracious God was not a safe God, but he was a good God. He was a God who was to be feared, but he was because he was king. He was their sovereign. He is gracious and He is benevolent, but He is holy and He is just. And He has expectations for those whom He calls His covenant people. If there was any doubt in their minds, this day proved to be true. God is holy, God is just. God is terrifying, but God is good. God wasn't fooling around, and neither should they. Our world tends to make God in our own image. We tend to make God in our own image. We would rather Him be someone that is safe and accepting, right? We want a safe God, one who agrees with us, one who blesses, and basically one who follows after, like a little lost puppy. In other words, basically what we want is to switch places with God. Everyone speaks of God as love. And it's true. We forget that while God is love, He is thrice holy, as R.C. Sproul would say. He is holy, holy, holy. So therefore, even His love is a holy love. And because they don't realize who God is, they try to approach Him so cavalierly. There at Sinai, the people were learning a very good lesson that they should not have forgotten, but they seem to have in just a couple of weeks. They seem to have left them quite quickly, that God has descended, that He is good, and that He is holy, but He is not safe. He has manifested Himself on that mountain, but there is a reason that He manifested Himself on that mountain. There's a reason that His presence was there. He was communicating with them. He was talking to them. He was this communicating presence to let them know who they were and who He was and what He expected of them as His covenant people. So that they, again, would be not continue to be His covenant people, but they would continue to be His effective covenant people among the world, among the nations. He communicates their need to be consecrated. He communicates their need to stay back for their own safety. And one verse that we overlook comes from Exodus chapter 19, verse 9. It was so easy to overlook this, but look at verse 9. He says, "And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you." Every single one of them heard the voice of God. They hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. He wanted the people to hear His own voice, but He also wanted them to trust Moses when He gives them His law. They needed to believe Moses as His messenger. When God gave the Ten Commandments, He gave them to the people, not just to Moses, though. So often we allow Charlton Heston and Cecil B. DeMille to color our view of what happened on the mountain of Sinai. Right? We think that's what it was. Like Moses goes up and God's giving Moses just the Ten Commandments, and Moses comes down with those Ten Commandments and sees that the people are going after strange gods and have made an idol. That's not how it happened. Moses was going down the mountain, was going to talk to the people, and all of a sudden God just said, "You know what? I'm going to talk for myself." And He gives them the Ten Commandments. He is a communicating God. He communicates with His people. Look at me over at Hebrews chapter 1. Because we need to understand that this wasn't a one-time experience. God is in constant communication with His covenant people. Now, does He speak audibly? No. It doesn't mean He isn't communicating. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1, going into verse 2. Long ago, at many times, and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son, whom He appointed the heir of all things, through whom he had also he created the world. Jesus has come, God's not just representative, but God's manifestation, living with the people again. And these words of Jesus have been written down for us to read, and they have been expounded to us in letters from various apostles so that we can understand them. Right? I mean, all of Scripture is breathed out by God. We have 66 books of God's communication so that we would know Him. So that when we are troubled, we can hear from Him. All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching. So we can learn, for reproof. So when we're wrong, we learn from that. For correction, so we can get right back on course. For the training in righteousness, so that we actually become holy as He is holy. To be what we have been called to be. To live the life worthy of our own calling. We have it here because He has communicated it to us. Like the people eventually Moses needed to go down and become their go-between, right? God's speaking to them. But they ultimately needed a go-between. So while they were to be the go-between between all the nations and God, they themselves needed a go-between. And so Moses became that go-between. He became that mediator. They needed the intercessor. They needed one to speak on their behalf. To relay their message. To relay the message of God. They needed one to speak and be an advocate with the Father. And so do we. And we have. John calls Him Jesus Christ, the righteous. Because He is our advocate. His righteousness is our righteousness. And He goes to God on our behalf. I love the writer of Hebrews says that He ever lives and pleads. He's our ever-present intercessor, true essence. He is our advocate, that when we go astray and we do wrong, He is there to plead our case. And not only was it Jesus that is now our intercessor, but we also are told by Paul and Romans that the Spirit also pleads and is our intercessor and makes prayers when we don't know what to pray. We don't know how to pray, and our prayers may be off kilter a little bit. The Spirit relays those prayers according to God's will. We see that God has purposely condescended Himself to this mountain to communicate to His people, and He did it again through Christ. He made plans to live with them, right? Part of this whole law that we're not getting into, but if you go through and you read some of the rest of Exodus, you will see that part of this plan that God made was to live, to tabernacle with His people. He gave orders to make a tabernacle so that His presence could ever be with the people. And He wandered in the wilderness, leading them all the way for 40 years. Lived with them, led them, spoke. He didn't do it just once, He did it twice. The second time He came in the flesh. And when He left, He did it a third time. It was better for Christ to ascend up into heaven, that He may send God the Holy Spirit to live within us. Matt talked about that last week. If you haven't listened to this sermon, please. That is probably the best I've heard in that scripture. We are reminded of this gracious God who condescends to live among His people, to walk with them, and to talk with them, and to lead them, and to instruct them, and ultimately died. He has communicated with us in various ways. He has given us his word, but another way that he communicates with us is love, reminds us of it, blesses us with the gift of the Lord's Son. So as we take up this morning, ponder anew how gracious and faithful God is. His promises are promises that he keeps. And he has covenanted with us. And this is his covenant sign. He is in the process of consecrating us even through this bread and cup. And while we must respect and be in awe of him, he is our benevolent Father, who opens up his throne of grace to us, that we may speak to him. Remember I said we have to go to him, not cavalierly, but to go to him in the right way. What is the right way? Through Christ. He is our great high priest, that we can go to his throne of grace anytime we can. He has opened to us his throne of grace, that we may speak to him, and he has given us his word